Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by a very, very special guest. She's the current assistant coach with Racing Louisville in the NWSL. She's also previously won Liga MX with Tigres in Mexico as their head coach. She's a Canadian Olympian, a former player. It's a very long list of honors. I can probably sit here for the next few minutes and talk about it. It is none other than a very special Carmelina Moscato. Carm, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. That's what happens when you turn 40. A lot's going on in your life.
I think it's more of the experience and just the very impressive things you have done. Carm, usually I start off with a bit of an icebreaker when guests join me here. And my icebreaker for today is, what is your favorite quote that you've come across and why?
Oh, wow. I actually been reconnecting with one of my tattoos. It's a little bit of a concept quote. So it's amor fati. And, it's Latin and it means to embrace your fate, and which essentially is your life and all the areas that you may or may not understand. So that's resonating with me at the minute.
Oh, wow. A very timely question then.
Perfect, actually.
It's
We
beautiful. I
didn't even
love
set that
that.
up. Look at us go.
Carm, I wanted to talk about obviously you've just returned to the NWSL, this time as an assistant coach with Racing Louisville. When you were previously in the league, the club didn't actually exist. So how did this opportunity arise and eventually materialize and come together?
Yeah, great question. I've always been an adventure seeker, I guess, in my football career, both as a player and a coach. So I would say everything led sort of perfectly to this. I stopped playing in 2016 and was adopted by the Canadian Federation in terms of, a mentorship of sorts and coaching opportunities, which led me to a few countries, Australia, Denmark, Mexico, Bahamas for a quick stint.
Yeah.
And actually, after the Mexico chapter, which I'm sure we'll get into, I ended up taking a little personal break from all the moves. I mean, I had 5 countries in 6 years I had moved to. So there was a lot of personal and professional stress, I guess, and a little bit of burnout. And so I
Mm.
decided to take some time for me, and I want this career to be long. I think this comes with ebbs and flows, and I did that, and I think it served its purpose. Was looking at the NWSL as my next challenge. Was actually initially interested in head coaching positions, and the timing wasn't right there. And I got a call from Bev Yanez, and a very unexpected call that I was very pleasantly surprised to receive.
And I'm sure we'll get to talk about Bev in a moment, but when she picked up that phone and said, Carm, we need to have a few words, what were the project and the kind of the goals that she was looking to achieve that matched what you were looking for professionally and personally, like you mentioned, after 8 months kind of being away from the sidelines and the coaching? Obviously, you were active with a lot of commentary work. You were in Australia. So changed up a few things, but what was Beth telling you and saying that you were like, yeah, this is a really great opportunity that matches what I'm looking for?
Yeah, look, I mean, when you go from being a head coach to an assistant, you have to really respect the head coach that you're working for as an assistant, going back into a role that, again, wasn't necessarily planned. But I do feel that when you respect the person as a player and as a coach and what she's developed in her experiences, the project itself is definitely on the rise. And I
Mm.
had known that from a lot of research I had done on the league itself and the club itself. And so there wasn't much selling to be done. I knew the players inside and out in terms of what they were going to be able to bring, and where we could go. And I really believed in Bev and believe in Bev and believe in where this club is possible, the possibilities within it.
Mm.
I think 4 years old also as a club is also interesting. It's young, and you can help. I feel like it helped build some of the foundational pieces that are continually, those bricks that are being put down. So I felt it was purposeful for all, and it made sense. It was a win-win.
It was a win-win when you say it like that. Has it been an adjustment period going from head coach to assistant coach, or that's not something that you've really encountered?
Yeah, I mean, I started off a little bit more in sort of an assistant role when I was first starting, and I think when you don't feel ready to be a head coach, then you're kind of a little bit more willing to be an assistant. But I feel like what's happened for me is it's a lot of self-awareness. I think all head coaches have preferences, have ways they want to play, have ways they want to manage people, and of course, you don't want to impose your way. You can only contribute to a group that's heading in a very common direction, and I think that that's what we are doing very well. And I feel like I've adapted to the fact that just low maintenance, high value is really my MO, if I'm honest, as an assistant, and try to keep delivering every day as much value as I possibly can to player, staff, and people across the organization. And
Yeah.
I think when you go in with that mentality, it's easy. Yeah.
I love that mentality, and it actually backs up really well of what I wanted to ask you next of like what are the different things that you look at and weigh when looking at different coaching opportunities. I think sometimes you hear head coaches or assistant coaches be like it's the group of players or it's actually the project that we're working on. Or for you, what were the cons and pros or like the criteria list that you were looking to tick, moving on from Mexico?
Yeah. I think I mentioned about Bev, and I think that was the most critical piece. She's a very kind, but also very strong human being in her way. And I love the way she leads. And I knew I would like the leader that she is. And I really felt the intuition around that decision was, I think we're going to make a really good team here. And I think you can't really deny those kinds of, that intuition. I think from a professional development perspective, all experiences add to your story. For me, it's a bit of a mosaic. I've been everywhere, and I think it's going to make me, a better leader ultimately, and wherever I land and wherever I do that. And so I want to also be able to say that I have been an assistant coach, because then you get the perspectives of that as well. And I think it was a very unique time in a league that is, leading in a lot of areas, especially on the sporting side, the commercial, the marketing. It all made sense. I wanted to learn, and I actually was very fortunate. I had a FaceTime with Arsene Wenger. Imagine that. And I met him at some of the FIFA events, and he was telling me, he's like, knowledge is everything. Never get caught up in titles. Always go where you can learn, grow, and gain knowledge and experience. And that was one of his main messages. And lo and behold, a month later, I'm getting an assistant offer. So it all was very timely, like I said, and I'm very happy and better for it.
I think Arson must have spoken it to the universe then, because you
I guess
can't,
so.
you can't
It was
time it
odd.
like
It was very odd. Yeah.
that's I feel like that's something that you look back on, you're like, wait, the timing is just the time frame is way too
Exactly.
close there. But
Uh-huh.
you obviously mentioned Bev, and she's the one who kind of picked up the call and said, let's chat about this. She's somebody who you have worked before, maybe not on the sidelines, but actually on the pitch. You guys were
Mhm.
former teammates in 2014, Seattle. Did you ever see this happening when you guys were playing together? Was there ever a moment that you were tactically speaking and then it was like, we could be doing this maybe like in 10 years' time?
Yeah, honestly, yes. In the sense of maybe not coaching together per se, but I knew we would both be coaches. And I knew that because we went to, I'll never forget, we went for a little coffee. I think she drank tea at the time. She had just come back from Japan, and some of her
Mm.
experiences where she was top goal scorer there and had some incredible, training methodology that she participated in. And I remember I was always a student of the game. I looked up to John. John Herdman has been somebody that's taught me the game. I really loved his, methods and his approach to so many things in his philosophy. And I remember asking her, how was it in Japan? Like, how was your team? How was IMAC? And she would show me
Mhm.
exercises on a little piece of paper and a napkin, and I would do the same. And we were just so intrigued at that side. And not every player is,
Yeah.
to be honest. And I think we really did share that. And she's so intelligent around the game and the way she sees it. And I love people who've had different experiences. That part of the world's different in Japan, and they're some of the best technicians in the world. And what does that look like? And how did it feel for you? So yeah, we did actually. Funny enough, we did have those interactions early doors.
It looks like, I mean, obviously, there's been a lot of experience from your end, like you mentioned, different countries, different leagues, even from your playing days, but very similar with Bev. And you guys had that chemistry together from a while back. Is it easier now when you're working together and kind of looking at this project, putting your ideas, given the fact that you have worked together? It's not like you have to get through communication barriers. You're meeting a totally different person. This is somebody who you've known for a while.
Yeah, I think when you start any sort of maybe new professional relationship, you need to really build trust and respect. And I think when you walk in the door, and you almost have that from the hop, you're just accelerated by 6 to 12 months. We
Mhm.
already skipped that part. She knows I'm going to be loyal to her. She knows I'm going to be, ruthlessly supportive of her and her ideas and what she wants, and always seek to understand. And I think that
Mhm.
that's where things have gone off to a good start. They have, where I can deliver what she's looking for as
Mhm.
an assistant, and be adaptable to her needs. And I think that's what a good assistant should do.
Mm.
So we skipped a lot of steps. We arrived, in a bow that way. And although we'll go through hard times and some results won't go our way or whatever the case, managing a program is not easy for anyone.
Mhm.
It's comes challenges. I think we're going to be a good, solid team.
Yeah, you definitely skip a lot of the introductions and going out for coffees and teas because you've already done that probably
Yeah.
20, 30 times.
Yep.
But I also have to ask about kind of your return now to the league. It has boomed and grown, not even in the past 10 years, but just the past 5 years. The growth of the league has completely changed, at least from our perspective from the outside. But for you, what is kind of the thing that you didn't expect to see that much of a shift? Is it the playing style? Is it just the commercialization around the league? What has been that noticeable difference from you almost like 3 months in now returning as a coach?
Well, I'm going to call the elephant in the room, which I think is sort of the player fees and salaries and things of that design. I mean, I remember playing off of the federation salaries for anywhere from some players were 8 grand to 30 grand Canadian in an American league. I mean, the growth is insane to look at the economic potential of the players and staff included. I think that is a tribute also to what you said, the commercialization, the marketing that is surrounding the game in this country. Big tribute to the U.S. national team fighting for all that they do. Everyone in this country and the world is benefiting from that fight, as you know, and as we know. And I think also when I look at the expansion teams, different markets being viable, Utah coming back, Boston coming in, soon enough, and even a city like Louisville being so unique in what they offer, and sort of the Lynn Williams Stadium looks sort of like a whiskey barrel, like all these sort of quirky parts of, I guess, the country, and it gets to represent different aspects of this country. So I would say just the growth in general is spectacular, and I only see it getting more and better and grander. So I think everyone involved should be proud, and every part of the story has led to this, and is not, there's obviously some dark parts of the story too. And I think there's an excavation, almost a cleansing of sorts, and it's a new chapter. And I think that was also needed for the sport to move forward.
Yeah, I think when you look at journeys of leagues that are developing or continue to develop, the journey is not a very kind of like nice, flowy upwards. There's a lot of bumps and blips that they have to go through, and this is certainly something that we've seen the league experience not so long ago. But off the pitch, you've also returned to the city that you coached back in university, and different city. Like, do you get nostalgic feelings?
You know what? It was such a long time ago, but the one thing, and I always say this, no matter where I've been, it's been the people, of course. And the head coach that hired me and gave me my first start and believed in me at the University of Louisville when I was 22 years old is Karen Ferguson, and she's still here. And in the same role, in the same position, leading this program. And I mean, I feel that is so special. Coming back to a place where I started my coaching career, and now I'm, it's in a different place. So we reconnected. We have, our catch ups all the time. And I just feel so lucky to be around her again. And when I look at the city itself, it's grown, it's changed. I wouldn't say that I look around and be like, oh, I remember this place. I think it's changed a lot. But that's what'll happen in 20 years. But yeah, it's pretty unique. And I can't, when you can only connect the dots backwards, I don't know what this one means, but it definitely feels good to be back.
I love it. I think it's kind of an underrated city where it flies under the radar, like a
Yeah,
good
cool.
place to spend some time on.
For
But a very
sure.
cool place to spend time on is Mexico. Want to take it back to Tigres, different country, different league, also kind of a developing league. What stood out for you that you said you wanted to take this big challenge, a role that had expectations around it, different country, assuming different language. I don't know if you do speak Spanish, but also that was something that is a bit of a challenge. But what stood out for you? And you said, "Yep, I want to take this brain tickle."
Man, I mean, I think it's a little bit of, you got to be a bit crazy as well. I mean, I was in Denmark in a very, kind of good position, meaning I love the club. I was a young, developing, talented team that I felt we could take it to another level there in
Mm,
Denmark had I stayed the duration of that particular contract and opportunity. And, I just sort of, how it all occurred, I hired an agent to sort of help me navigate my career moving forward. I had no intentions,
mm,
truly and truthfully, of leaving. And that's what happens. Opportunities come in those summer windows. And there was one that had been presented to me, and I had already stated I wanted to stay in Europe. I wanted to coach in Champions League.
mm,
I had stated those things to my former agent at the time. And to make a long story short, he had offered an opportunity that in Mexico. And I said, well, what are we talking about? I just bought some European appliances. I'm settling in. It took one conversation to understand the magnitude and ambition of a club like Tigres, and something sparked in me. I mean, I said, I have to back myself, and these opportunities don't come around. Lightly, I didn't take it lightly. So I went through the full process, not really knowing, where it would lead, and it was a no-brainer by the end. It was very difficult to leave, and the expectation, the scrutiny, the consequence, they're all very heavy in a club like that. And I thought I handled it relatively well. And I think we bonded as a group over some of those challenges and some of the expectations, and stuck together. And it's a chapter, I would pretty confidently say, one of the best of my life. So I look back with fond memories, but sometimes those things take a toll, and that's how it is.
And you mentioned backing yourself, which is an interesting kind of mentality, because you have to in a new challenge like this. But how did you lead your philosophy in a challenge like this where you had to back yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I already have, a really strong way that I love to coach and work. And I believe in, philosophical clarity. And I could bring that to a team that had already all the tools and parts. I mean, they are by far the best team in Mexico. I had every single type of player you can imagine across multiple lines. The language barrier was less of an issue than you would imagine. 75% of the team spoke English, understood English. And by the end of it, I understood 70% Spanish. So we were kind of exactly, they would speak to me in Spanish and I would respond in English, and we'd get through it. Had a few translators on staff as well, but genuinely made me a better coach. I think when you're coaching in another language, which never say never, right? I said I would never do. I actually said that out loud before this came along. I said I'd never do that, because my strength is communication. And I was never going to compromise that. And then again, lo and behold, there you go, and move to a new country and speak Spanish. But yeah, I would say that you learn how to use visuals. You learn how to paint better pictures on the pitch. I mean, really, if you take away the wordiness that can come with coaching at times, you're better for it. So I feel actually I improved a lot. I had to be more organized. I had to be clear with my staff. I had to be clear with players. I couldn't mince a word, because then you don't know what's going to come out. So raised my awareness in every way, and I'm so much better for it.
The players and communicating with the players and getting to them personally. I think when we watch any of the highlight reels or the goals, whenever the camera pans over to the sidelines, the player not only are celebrating with each other, but they're all jumping on you most of the time, also celebrating with you. And when you were at the club, and even now, a lot of the players speak very positively about their experience with you and how much you impacted their career. How were you able to get that special bond kind of in a relatively short amount of time with such a special group of players?
I think that's culture. I think it's making people feel seen and heard and valued. And I did that on a daily basis. I mean, I took a lot of time to get to know every single human being. Started off with those one-on-one meetings, which I think you do anyway. But along the way, I think it's remembering the details. I think it's making sure they understand your decisions. I think it's making sure they're growing as a player and as a person. And we did go through some hard times together. And I was always made sure to be what they needed me to be in that moment. And like I said, I think that did take a toll, and maybe I need to reflect on how much I gave, but I wouldn't have taken it back. I think I really did invest in every single person in that program. And I still, till they have a game tonight. Funny fact, I can't watch it. I cannot watch Tigres play. It is so hard for me to watch them play. It's emotional for me. It's very difficult. I wish them the best, but I don't watch them play. And yeah, I just want them to do well, and they know that. I think we left knowing that we all want the best for each other.
Have you had a chance to fly back and watch them, or is that still something that's a bit difficult to commit to and do?
I went once. Bianca, Sierra, and Fanny Mayor. They had their twins that I was. It was very interesting. They had come to me for that decision in their life. They had been terrified to ask me if they were able to proceed with a huge milestone in their life, and I was so confused at why they thought I would do nothing but support them through it. So they had obviously had other experiences with other regimes, and I just said, how do we do this? And so I feel very much part of that story, and we really did. I was part of the pregnancy and everything that went into it. So when Bianca gave birth, I flew in for it, and I so happened to catch a game. I mean, the reason wasn't for the game, but it was to be at the hospital with her. So to put a closing that chapter. So yeah, no, you can tell that obviously they're like family to me,
Yeah.
and I did watch a game, and it was hard. I didn't watch a lot of it. I was just chatting.
Yeah, again, perfect timing with a pregnancy, a birth, and it just happens
Yeah,
to be that there's a game. I feel
there's
like
a
that's
game.
kind of a motto with the past few years. It's just a lot of good timing.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
uh,
Absolutely.
but I also wanted to ask, you mentioned Denmark, Mexico, and WSL youth national team as well. What is a unique thing that you've been able to learn at every single place that you've coached at so far?
Yeah. I guess the biggest thing I take away is you really need, you can come in with such strong beliefs, right, about how you want to see the game played, what kind of locker room you want to build, how you want
Mhm.
to run sessions, staff. But at the end of the day, if you don't get to know the people in front of you, and culturally, like even in Denmark, they had a very different way about them. You know, they almost needed me to communicate differently. One of
Mm.
the top players in the club said to me, said, Key, what do you need from me? And she said, you're very Canadian. I said, excuse me, what do you mean? And she said, sometimes you say, you fluff around it, like, tell us how it is. I'm
Right.
like, she's a 17-year-old superstar telling me to tell her how it is. And, and you think you're trying to be kind and deliver a message with certain skills. And I realized those skills weren't valuable there in Denmark. They really are a direct
Mm.
culture. So that was an example. If you look at Mexico, the girls, keep jumping on my back after goals and stuff like that. That wouldn't fly in half the work. But if you don't celebrate with them, it looks like you don't care. And
Yeah.
if you don't show emotion on the sideline, I feel I was almost more animated than I would be. But it looks like you don't care if you're not. So I'm not acting, but you also just adapt,
Yeah.
to what's needed for that group to maximize their potential. And I think I've been adaptable in all those ways. So yeah, that's continual. It's cultural for sure.
Mm. You have to match the energy that's around you and learn
Do
how the culture acts around the soccer. Like it all combines together so beautifully. Um,
That's right.
and a new thing that's finally happening and a new culture that we'll have to explore is Project 8 here in Canada, finally getting a league. Where were you when you heard the news or when this was announced of this is finally coming? Assuming you probably knew before it was announced.
You know what? It's so funny, and full credit to Diana Matheson, Steph Labbe, some of those
Mm.
leaders, even Billy Wilson in North Toronto. Like there's a lot of leaders in this country. Georgia Simberling, they're doing a fantastic job. I mean, but fun fact, I mean, I worked on the foundations of Project 8 at
Mm.
Canadian Soccer Business for 2 years prior to that, and that was actually the role that I had taken away from coaching.
Mm.
It was the only role that I had taken away from really being on the grass. And I was working for Eva Havares, who's now at Tennis Canada, and COVID hit and the project sort of lost a lot of steam, but we were looking at ways to make professional women's football viable in the country. And so Dee and I connected that entire time. She has taken it to an absolute another planet. And all credit to their team. But to your point, I knew about it. I know almost too much. And I gave them a lot of credit for the stamina that it takes to build something that's never been built in a way that it's just never been done before. And I would say in any sport. So they are continue to say, I don't like the word pioneer, but I still
Mm.
think it's relevant for them. I think they're etching their names in Canadians' hearts and minds and doing
Yeah.
something that's never been done. And I honestly just the group that John Herdman cultivated as our history makers. We all want to make things better everywhere we go. And I think that started back in 2012.
Mm.
You see a lot of us doing things in different industries in our own way and being very uniquely ourselves. And I think Project 8 is another expression of that.
Yeah, what are some of those challenges though that the league will have to face, not just the league, but even the structures around it in terms of grassroots development programs, local clubs, which you were very familiar with before you went professional. But what are those challenges that must be addressed before kind of launching and in some ways not to, like I feel like when we speak about Project 8 there's a lot of like excitement and this is going to be perfect, but at the same time there's still challenges that need to be looked at and addressed, and you have been very involved, like I mentioned, coaching youth groups. You've grown up in the system, but what are those things that you have experienced that you're like, yeah, we need to look at those things before moving forward?
Yeah, pathway alignment, market viability, the Canadian public torn, celebrating and supporting a lot of different endeavors. So we're just getting a smaller piece of the pie.
Mm.
An industry that's never been built, therefore lacks experience. I would say trying to compete or trying to be a league amongst the women's football professional realm so late in the game, what does that actually look like on and off the pitch? But you have to start somewhere. That's where the respect comes in. But really, I think the pathway alignment is really difficult because every province is like its own country and it's at its own place in terms of where they stand for women's football girls, development, registration, popularity. Like it is a hard job to pull this together. How do you make, you don't, CPL's done it one way. There are other ways. And I was going to say, a coast to coast league in a country that's 7.5 hours, 8 hours apart, like in terms of time zone. I mean, it's just a beast. A lot of problems to solve, which again, that's why I give credit to the group who's sunk their teeth into it and got their hands dirty. And it won't be perfect to start. And I think Canadians can be unforgiving sometimes. And I think it's going to need about 5 to 10 years. Just like the Mexican league is, to be honest. And I would say if we were to draw some comparisons or sort of inspiration from Mexico, they broke off a little earlier than we did, built their own thing, made it mandatory as part of club licensing that every men's professional team had a women's team, and some invested more than others, hence Tigres being where they are. They started from scratch. So the clubs that invest from the beginning will reap those benefits in Canada as well as Tigres and Pachuca and Club America and those clubs. So I'm excited to see it. Don't get me wrong. I'll be watching from a distance right now and supporting it as an ally of the project. It always will be, of course. It's my roots, but yeah, I wish them well. I really think it'll succeed in due time.
I think you're right about the point that it's going to take some time to properly kind of the image to kind of develop. It's like a little, I'm not sure what they're called. The images they need to develop. It takes some time to get there.
You mean like film?
Exactly, just that. Car, we're getting a little short on time here, but there's always two questions that I like to end my pod with guests here. First one's soccer related. The second one, not so much. So the first one is, what are kind of the main goals that you're hoping to achieve with Louisville this season?
Listen, I'm the IDP coach, meaning I develop the individuals within the team, and I hope to make an impact in the players' lives in some way, shape, or form, on or off the pitch. I think that's always where I start. I'm very vision clear on being player centric, and I want to add value to the staff and hopefully to the club in the direction that they continue to take with recruiting, with building the brand, with connecting with the community. I hope to be part of it all. I'm the kind of person, for right or for wrong, that wherever I am, I'm all in. And with whoever I am. So I'm doing that right now. And I just want to see us do better than we have in the past and before. So
I think it's going to be very exciting. It's early days in the season now that the chaos is only just loading.
Fully hit. Yeah.
The fully hit.
Right.
Yeah. And the second question is, what is your Tim Hortons order?
Honey cruller with, what do you call it? The slushy drink. Oh my gosh.
The lemonade one?
No, this coffee one.
Oh, the ice caps.
Ice cap and a honey cruller. It's been a while. So wow, I've been out of the country. Ice cap and a honey cruller, small one with cream.
You can't beat it. That's a great combo there. Carm, thank you so much for joining me today. Really appreciate your time. And very excited to see what you and Louisville get cooking this season.
I appreciate you very much. Thank you so much, Marion.